When Batman Caped Crusader was first announced, I was under the impression that this show would focus more on realistic, grounded, pulpy crime stories. While that was true for the most part, there were 2 very clear supernatural episodes, and this took me by surprise. Upon reflection, I probably shouldn't have been all that surprised. After all, this show took inspiration from the golden age of Batman comics. In those early days, Batman spent his time battling gangsters, weird science villains, and the odd monster like the Mad Monk, who was a literal vampire. And that wasn't just a feature of the golden age of comics. In the 1980s, Batman faced a pseudo-vampire woman named Nocturna. But the version we saw in Caped Crusader was quite different to the character from the comic books. Before we get to Caped Crusader's Nocturna, let's go back to the comic book original. She first appeared in 1983's Detective Comics 529, and her name was Natalia Knight. Now, her backstory is fairly convoluted, but I'll do my best to summarize it. She had been an orphan living on the streets until she was found and unofficially adopted by wealthy criminal Charles Knight when she was 12 years old. When Charles died, his son Anton returned to Gotham, and the two bonded over their loss. Natasha had a passion for astronomy and used her inheritance money to put herself through college. However, one evening she attempted to observe stellar light in a vacuum and became exposed to the strange energy. This exposure drained her skin of all pigment, which made her very sensitive to sunlight. She and Anton used all of their money to try to treat Natasha's condition to no avail, and as such, Anton resorted to becoming the costumed criminal, the Night Thief. Nocturna became a love interest for Batman and Bruce Wayne. She took custody of Jason Todd temporarily, fell out with Anton, who went on to rename himself the Night Slayer in response, and got into a scuffle with Catwoman. All of this was your standard comic book soap opera affair, but one thing I really liked was her role as an astronomer, and how she noticed the world's night sky was starting to become more red, heralding the coming of a crisis. Crisis on Infinite Earths saw most of DC's continuity being reset, and what this meant for Nocturna and her adopted brother Anton was that they simply vanished, becoming one of those nebulous characters that sort of existed but also kinda didn't. Try not to think about it too hard. She wouldn't reappear again until Robin 100 in 2002, although she was named Natalia Mitternacht, or Natalia Midnight. She wasn't a significant villain by any means, but did show up in a handful of stories in the subsequent years. Following DC's continuity getting reset again after the New 52, Nocturna appeared as a former lover of Batwoman, but this Nocturna was a full-blown villainous vampire. It's worth noting that this version of the character also turned up in the Batwoman TV series. One other thing to note is that back in the early 1990s, Bruce Timm had wanted to feature Nocturna in Batman the Animated Series. They had planned to lean into her vampirism, but the TV censors of the time would not allow any references to bloodletting. This same rule is why Spider-Man's Morbius had suckers on his hands for draining plasma. If you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. So, you can see why, when given the opportunity to start his own Batman show free from many of the restrictions of broadcast television, Bruce Timm wanted to revisit this character. However, what we got in Caped Crusader is quite different from the proposed version of the character in BTAS. There, Natalia Knight is a teenage girl that preys on children, even if she does look just like Wednesday Addams. But she still had the aversion to sunlight. She doesn't drink blood, instead she drains the life force of her victims. It doesn't seem to kill them, it just knocks them unconscious for an unspecified amount of time. Presumably they opted to have her drain energy rather than blood, not because of censorship, but because draining blood can be fatal and leaves a visible wound. A key point in Natalia's scheme is that she leaves behind no evidence of her attack. Nocturna being a child genuinely surprised me when she was unveiled, given Bruce Timm's propensity for drawing attractive women. Apparently it was his intention to reuse the original design that he made for BTAS. She was intended to be one of the biggest donors to Gotham's orphanage, and she would use her charitable work to hide the fact that she was draining the life out of children. However, this idea didn't resonate particularly well with the writer's room, and one of the writers suggested making her a child, which immediately brought to mind producer Matt Reeves' "Let Me In." Natalia and her brother Anton are part of a travelling carnival. Anton runs a show where he claims to be a scientist that has discovered a secret treatment that will enhance people's strength. Natalia acts as a plant in the audience that he can call upon to demonstrate said treatment. In reality, Natalia is impossibly strong after she drains another person's life force, and her brother is well aware of this. He even allows her to drain one child per town they visit, his argument being that no one will notice if just one child goes missing temporarily. Natalia, meanwhile, has an insatiable thirst. She cannot help herself from targeting more and more children in Gotham City, and that's what brings her to the attention of the Batman. It's worth noting that each of the children that she victimized from the Gotham orphanage are references to the comic book Robins. Dickie, Dick Grayson, Jay, Jason Todd, Steffi, Stephanie Brown, and Carrie Kelly, complete with her sling. Some commenters asked where the other Robins are, and speculated that the fact that they are not at the orphanage means they will one day become Batman's Robin. Well, the simple answer is that Tim Drake and Damian Wayne are not orphans. At least, Tim didn't become an orphan until he was much older. So why would they be in an orphanage? The orphanage is run by Leslie Tompkins and paid for by Bruce Wayne, and that's a detail that I enjoyed. Each of these children has already experienced the tragedy that would have led to them becoming Robin, namely the death of their parents. And Batman has intervened in a far more healthy way by giving them a caring home separate from him. It may disappoint some viewers that these characters may never become Robin. In fact, there's no guarantee that there will ever be a Robin in Caped Crusader, but I personally like the fact that Batman ensured that these children had a happy home to grow up in, rather than having them put on a cape and a domino mask and getting them to punch gangsters and madmen. But getting back to Natalia and Anton, I found it interesting that they're both portrayed in a negative light. Not only are they deceptive with their circus act, but they really don't care about the harm they cause these children. Anton's only objection is that if Natalia drains too many children in one place, then she will be discovered and taken away from him. He loves his sister and wants to protect her, even from herself. But Natalia can't see that. All she can focus on is her insatiable appetite, and she views Anton as a hindrance, preventing her from being her true self. She lashes out at him when he tries to stop her from draining a third child, Steffi Brown. She hadn't intended to harm him, but the force of the impact broke his spine and she left him there to die. The thought to help him doesn't even cross her mind. All she wants to do is find another child to drain. Of course, Anton was right, because the moment the little girl goes missing, everything stops. The Carnival is put into lockdown as they try to find her. Note that when Dickie went missing, only Jay noticed, and nobody thought twice when Jay also disappeared. Perhaps because he was off playing somewhere. Boys will be boys, etc. But when 3 kids go missing within a short span of time, that's when alarm bells start ringing. One of my favourite scenes from this episode involved Bruce Wayne chasing after Natalia when he spots her leading Steffi into a hall of mirrors. This room is a maze, and Bruce finds looking at his own distorted reflection frustrating. So he smashes through one of the walls and asks the bemused carnival workers if they've seen the 2 girls. From their perspective, all they see is a violent, angry man demanding to be given 2 girls. Without the context that he was trying to save Steffi, he looks like a demented pervert, and so the carnival workers beat him up. They're not trying to protect Natalia or her secret. The chances are they have no idea what she and Anton have been up to. They were just delivering their own brand of justice. Note that when Batman returns, Waylon is more than happy to cooperate, after a little physical persuasion. That's something else I found noteworthy. Obviously, Waylon is their version of Killer Croc, but he is not presented as a murderous monster at all. He's just a guy trying to make a living. Quite a lot of Batman's foes are disfigured or mutated in some form, which sends an unpleasant message about people that aren't conventionally attractive somehow being monstrous by default. In this interpretation of Killer Croc, and later on their Two-Face, Caped Crusader defies this trope. One of the other things of note within this episode is how Batman handles Natalia. His first instinct is to hit her, as he has done pretty much every other villain he's come across. And Natalia plays on this nicely, pretending like she's a poor little girl, causing Batman to pause. In reality, she's tougher than he is and starts to drain his energy. This may beg the question of why she didn't prey on adults sooner. Well, likely because a lost child that starts talking about a girl draining his soul is more likely to be dismissed than an adult reporting an assault. For as strong as Natalia is, it's the revelation that she had killed her brother that defeats her. Batman had interrogated Anton and witnessed his death. The realization of what a monster she truly is finally dawns on her, and all it took was the death of a loved one. At this point, she exposes herself to the sunlight in an attempt to make amends. Note that sunlight causes her skin to burn and will eventually kill her. Had Batman met her at the start of his career, before he started opening himself up to people and forming friendships in his own way, I find myself wondering if he would have just left her to her fate. But following the experiences he's had so far, he covers her in his cape and takes her in. He understands that yes, she committed the crime, but simply locking her up in prison won't help. Instead, she's placed in a special hospital ward where her condition can be studied and maybe one day treated. This is another sign of growth that Batman experiences across the first season. He had been cold and detached for the entire first half of the season, but throughout his experiences of saving people, working with members of the GCPD, and almost losing Alfred to the Gentleman Ghost, he was growing as a person. He began to feel things again. He felt empathy for Natalia, a sad, weeping child that went too far and lost her only family. And if there is anything Batman responds to, it's the loss of family. I would argue that this was Natalia's biggest contribution. Through her act of self-harm, she helped Batman realize that there was more than one way to deal with a monster. Okay, that's it for this video essay. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd like to hear more about Batman Caped Crusader, why not check out our podcast Totally Shui Flipside, where my wife and I have gone through all 10 episodes. This is a spoiler-filled conversation about each episode in sequential order, so only check this out if you've watched the show or if you have no intentions of ever watching it yourself. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month, which will grant you early access to my video essays and some supplementary perks like custom emojis, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, and community posts. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Alright, next time it's the big one, the plot point that had been built up to in every episode prior to this, the debut of Two-Face. Frankly, I could probably do a whole video just on the dinner sequence in episode 9, The Killer Inside Me, but I'll try to be more concise. Hope to see you then.